There's two kinds of wealth that are available in the world. And I'm finding that many people are figuring out the income affluent side of the equation, but we're not figuring out how to hold money in abundance, which is the asset side of wealth. And it's two different ways to look at it, meaning that you may be able to figure out how to get that income coming in the door and you're working hard and it's on this fuel, but is it fear-based fuel? Or is it fuel that's sustainable, that's not going to burn you and your body out? What's going on, everybody? We are going to talk about how to redefine yourself financially. What do I mean by that? Well, before we jump into it, I want to make sure I remind you to hit that subscribe, like, and notification bell. Why? Because I am going to absolutely help you get to a life that you love, because it's time for you to really find that deep joy and happiness in every single day of your life moving forward. Because too many of us are living from this place of stress and anxiety, and there's so much fear-based stuff coming at us these days that it's like, whew, let's just shed that right off of ourselves. And it's time for us to actually start living a life we absolutely love. So, how do we redefine ourselves? Each and every one of us has a story that has built us up to this point. And we don't realize how much when we think about that story, when we speak about that story, and when we feel the feelings of that story along our journey, that all we're doing is actually recreating the exact same thing for our tomorrow. You know, when I was on a coaching call yesterday, I was sitting there teaching them that we really need to put our financial past behind us. But you really can't put your past behind you unless you choose to redefine yourself today in the present moment. And what do I mean by that? It means that you need to be absolutely ferocious about what you are going to create, because you are the creator of your life and you are the energy that generates whatever it is that you want. Because remember, money is just the result of everything else in our life. There's two kinds of wealth that are available in the world. And I'm finding that many people are figuring out the income affluent side of the equation, but we're not figuring out how to hold money in abundance, which is the asset side of wealth. And it's two different ways to look at it, meaning that you may be able to figure out how to get that income coming in the door and you're working hard and it's on this fuel, but is it fear-based fuel? Or is it fuel that's sustainable, that's not going to burn you and your body out? This is the question. Because depending on what your fuel source is, will depend on whether or not you're going to find yourself like repeating the suffering pattern, which is your past. And you've worked so hard and so many hours and given of yourself for that. It's time to really align with your heart and your soul and your mission in what it is that you really truly are passionate about doing today, not yesterday, but today. Because if we keep talking about the yesterdays, all you do is recreate that in the present moment. And that's no different than our financial cycle. Our financial cycle, when we create debts and we put 100% of our payments that we have open cash flow to paying off those debts, guess what happens? All you do is recreate debts again. Why is that the case? That's the case because if you, let's say for an example, when I was coaching this group yesterday, I was talking about how the one woman had a question about debt. And she goes, but this debt is looming to me. This student loan debt that I have is looming. And these are people who have decided to go back to school to be acupuncturists. And so some of them had already finished paying off some of their student loans because they're redefining themselves in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. I had all three decades on my call yesterday. And how do you deal with this debt? And you're like, okay, well, I'm trying to launch myself into a new career, but now I've created this debt to go back to school. How do I do it? And this could be true for car debt. This could be true for mortgage debt, however it is that you define yourself. So, what is that? Well, if you take your cash flows, and by all means, I'm going to put the link below for you to actually try to run your cash flows. And keep in mind, I do not want it to be budget. I do not want you to have a budget. Why? Because if you think of the word budget, it's limiting. It's telling you you can't have what it is that you desire. And is that the kind of definition of how you want to redefine yourself for tomorrow? That you can't have what you want, that you can't manifest what you want, that somebody's telling you, no, you are a bad girl and you are a bad boy for not following your cash flow, right? Whoa, we have all this shame, blame, guilt, and judgment around money. We have so much of it going on, and it's time to chuck that out the door because we matter. So click the link below and download this worksheet that I have that will help you just become more aware of where your cash flows are so that you can decide whether or not this is how you want to define yourself for the future. Do you see how I said that a little bit differently? How you want to define yourself for the future? It wasn't about you can't have that anymore because you're spending too much money. You can't do this anymore because it's not appropriate. We have so much guilt and blame and shame around our money that we're not coming from a place of empowerment. So let's shift it. That's the biggest thing that you can do to redefine yourself financially, is to shift the way you perceive how you approach your money. So coming from empowerment, saying, do I really want that cash outlay anymore? Do I really want to have this pressure cooker anymore? Most of us don't. Most of us probably felt during the pandemic, we got a breath of fresh air. It was like, oh, I'm not forced to have to run around like a crazy person and go to all these parties and events and kids' activities and commutes to work. Like, it was almost the break that many of us needed. So let's continue and create more space. That's the second thing I always want people to do, is I want them to create more space for their life. And so many times in our cash flows, we're jammed up. It's kind of like our closets filled with crap. We have too much stuff in our closets. We're jammed up in our calendars. We're jammed up. And it's like, oh, we need to create space. Why? For unstructured space to live. So a way that you can practically redefine yourself financially when it comes to this cash flow worksheet that I have below is, here's the income coming in. Here's the expenses going out. And then decide whether or not you want to shift any of those cash flows to be for something else. What's that net number? Let's just say, as an example, you have, I'm just going to keep it easy math. If you have $1,000 a month coming in, and I get that this is not a realistic number, but if you have $1,000 coming in and your expenses are $500, subtract that. $500 is what's left over. How you can redefine yourself is to say, okay, if there's $500 after expenses, take one half of that. In all the years I've been a financial planner, no one ever creates an unsafe financial container by taking half of the net number of what you're already spending on a per month basis. Now, if your number's negative, then you need to go back and decide which outflows are your priorities and how can you shuffle them back up so that they actually become a number that makes that positive. Because redefining yourself is saying, you know what? I don't want that to be a negative cash flow number anymore because I'm tired of being under that pressure cooker. That you want it more to create something different than to stay in what today. Most of us don't even know what that net number is. I don't care if you're making $500,000 a year or you're making $50,000 a year. Most people do not know what that net number is on a month-to-month basis. Again, not good or bad, it just is. And so that if you come to a place where you can find that net number and you take half of that number and you apply it to how you want to define yourself in the future. So I always say, and I talk about this in both of my books, The Emotion Behind Money and Awaken Your Wealth, that take half that number and divide it into your short-term bucket, your midterm, and your long-term bucket. So going back to my example, you have $1,000 a month coming in, $500 a month going out. Your net number there is 500. Half of that's $250. So you split it as equally as possible between those three buckets. Some to build that emergency reserves, because one of the biggest ways that we define ourselves financially today as a culture around the world, this is not just America, this is around the world, that we use our debt instruments to actually bail us out when life happens. Because there's always going to be something that comes up that you don't expect. I don't know why we don't expect that the unexpected is going to show up, because it does. It always does. And the challenge is that we haven't created enough space. As an example, if you own a home, if you take a roof, a windows, dishwasher, laundry, washer, dryer, kitchen appliances, hot water tank, furnace, air conditioner, if you take those 8 things in your home, and we all know that a hot water tank expires like every 10 years. They break. So do furnaces, so do air conditioners, roofs. If you take $250 a month and you automatically put that into a savings account, which I love the online savings accounts because you can name your financial intention, call it the house maintenance fund. And maybe you have $250 a month to do it, and maybe you don't. Maybe you just have to start with $25 a month because that's the only open cash flow you have. Okay, that's all right. Start where you're at, because you only have your current reality. That's all you have. So let's actually apply it to your current reality, whatever that is. But $250 a month over a 20-year period of time, you will have the cash to pay for your roof. You'll have the cash to pay for hot water tanker. You'll have a cash to buy for your all appliances. The problem is most of us don't do it. And then when that comes, we're like, oh God. Same thing with a car. It's not like you don't know you're not going to have another car again sometime soon. But the question is do you want the bank to own your life as you define yourself financially? Or do you want to control your financial life? Who do you want to be in charge of your world? You or somebody else or some entity? This is where you can come from a place of empowerment. These are the ways that I want us to all start to redefine ourselves financially. I find so many people, particularly at times like when I'm taping this video right now, people are struggling because the market's going haywire. There's so much change going on. But if you were solid and had created enough space for yourself when you're redefining yourself financially, guess what? You wouldn't be so worried about what's going on in the macro environment. And this is where, when I'm talking about that cash flow worksheet, we don't realize how important that is that your net number, that $250 a month. So maybe that house maintenance fund is a spending piece. So a third of that, can I just round that number up to 300 so it's easy? So you put $100 a month and maybe you pay off more debt with that, because that's cleaning up your past. You take $100 more a month and you say, I got to put that in my spending bucket. So that $100 a month is going to go into that house maintenance fund so that I can start to build that up. My next pay raise, I'll bump each one of these up too. And then you take the other third, because you divide it into thirds, and you start building up that emergency reserve bucket and put some of it in retirement. So what you do is you're sprinkling the seeds around. You're planting the seeds of what you want to create. You want to clean up your financial past with your debts. You want to make sure you have the cash and create the space for doing with what life unexpected comes up. It may even be more fun than a house maintenance fund. Maybe it's that you want to take better vacations and spending. Okay, well then have that spending piece go there. But this is how you can redefine yourself financially. You can do this with any kind of new money in your life, whether it's pay raises, bonuses, opening up money in your cash flow worksheet, your budget. So I hope that helped you to rethink and reframe and redefine yourself financially, because the story that you've been does not have to be the story that you're going to be in the future. And don't forget, go to juliemurphy.com. I have coaching programs that I am starting up a new group every quarter. So go there and you'll be notified when the next one gets started. And don't forget, awakenyourwealthbook.com. You can get my book for free. I've got a workbook, online courses. We're here to help you get to a place that you absolutely love. So let's get to it and let's do it together. Thanks, everybody. Bye.